It's been a little while since I've done a book review, but I felt like I needed to talk to you guys about this one. It's called Lost Connections by Johann Hari, subtitled Why You're Depressed and How to Find Hope. When I picked this book up back in 2020, I didn't really know what to expect. I actually thought this was going to be a whole different type of book until I started reading it. And this book is predominantly about depression and anxiety. It's a very good mental health book. And a lot of people I know don't really like reading mental health stuff or embracing the mental health side of society. But Lost Connections, I think, is a very good read because this goes into the more social aspects of why someone might be dealing with depression and anxiety. It basically states that as much as doctors and big pharma like to prescribe antidepressants and anti-anxiety medication, they only work so much until you start addressing the root cause of depression and anxiety. Now, one of the big things that kind of ties into the title with this book is the lost connections that we have within society. Now, let me talk to you about that for a second because it basically goes into thinking about how depression and anxiety often stem from not having the connections in your life that you really need to feel safe, the lost connections per se. It basically goes into stating how the human ancestors all moved in tribes. Why did people move in tribes? Well, to help their family, their friends stay safe and protect one another. In today's society, so many people are doing their own thing that many people that suffer from depression and anxiety often don't have that social circle that makes them feel safe, that makes them feeling protected. And as someone who deals with depression and anxiety quite often, it actually makes a whole lot of sense as you're reading this book because society's kind of made you feel like you have to do it on your own for the most part, right? A lot of people are kind of in their own world, but one story that happened to Johann, it was he lived in a town in Germany where everyone was kind of being forced to pay more in their rent or whatnot, and they couldn't pay as much as the government wanted at the time. And these people, who seemingly your own neighbors, never got along because they felt like they had nothing in common, suddenly had a common goal. And they realized by coming together to fight for being able to pay their rent and not raising the rents and whatnot, they were able to come together and form such a strong bond with one another that they never thought they would have until they realized they had a way to unite on a common goal. And a lot of studies have shown that people who are depressed, who are anxious, they often have like a lonerness to them. And when you can get them all together with people that are dealing with the same things, and like in a group setting, they mentioned in this book what they did, like some kind of they worked with like flowers and stuff in another part of the book in another study, and depression and anxiety for that group of people lowered substantially. So it kind of makes you think, right, about the societal impacts that people will have when they're brought together versus when they feel lonely. This book also mentions how so many people don't feel like they have security. And that security is what's causing depression and anxiousness. People who are in jobs that they feel like they want to leave and they want to do something better with their lives, but they can't leave because they don't have that security, monetary security in that aspect, to go start life anew. So they continue to work these jobs on and on and on just because it provides them enough money to live, I guess, comfortably, if you want to call that, but they're not really happy day to day and they're just going through the motions. And when you give people the ability to know that their lives are secure and that they have a support group that is going to be behind them, so even when they fall, they have people to bring them back up, it makes depression and anxiety very much less prevalent. One thing that closes out this book that really stood with me was the thought that just like sickness is a sign that something needs to change with your body when you're feeling nausea, depression and anxiety are actually signals that your body is telling you that you need to change something within your life. Something about your current situation isn't working for you, and that's what's causing these feelings. There are mention of 3 different types of depression within this book. One is biochemical, another is based on like grief and society, I honestly forgot the full terminology, so please forgive me with that. But it kind of goes into all these different aspects that really dissect the different versions of what people could be going through. You know, it mentions grief and how people are often stigmatized to kind of get over things of such as a loss of a family member within a certain amount of time. But that really doesn't make sense because grief is handled by individuals differently. And it mentions how depression, in a way, is grief, but not for losing something, but for something you don't have, which is the connection to society. Society also has the class systems, and this book kind of goes into that. When you take those away and let people just interact as people, they tend to get along a lot better. You know, reading this book a lot reminded me of some of the motivational Mondays I do every week, and it really hit home with me that even from the moment I started reading it, it made it feel very familiar. Not just because certain things I've talked about in the past, but just certain things I felt in the past from dealing with it from personal experience. You know, it goes into how for a long time a stigma of depression and anxiety was that you had a chemical imbalance within your brain, and how doctors would prescribe antidepressants, but they would only work for so long. And then you would get prescribed a higher dose, and then that would only work for so long. But at the end of the day, the depression and the anxiety kept coming back, because at the end of the day, I know I just said that twice, unless you address that root cause that's causing your anxiety and depression, the medication can only work for so long. And it showed that within a study that was done at some point, that when given an antidepressant, a placebo, and nothing at all, the placebo and the antidepressant actually had the same result. So it proves that the antidepressant, where it might work for a certain group of people, it's not guaranteed to work for everyone. And depression and anxiety feelings are often stemming from something that it might be buried deep within ourselves that we have yet to want to embrace and confront to kind of get over it from there. And I truly believe, at least from personal experience, that depression and anxiety stems from trauma that is unfocused and unbeaten. And even though you might not fully think about it from a day-to-day basis, it lingers, and deep down it is what's causing certain amounts of anxiousness and depression within your life because of the fear of it happening again. So this book, in finalizing it, Lost Connections, Why You're Depressed, and How to Find Hope, as much as I just summarized some of the topics, it really doesn't do it justice unless you read through it, because I thought this was going to be something that I would read 20 pages and think, you know, it's not for me. But the studies and the stories and the analogies and the ideas that Johann Hari has gone into with just describing different forms of depression and anxiety is definitely worth reading, especially if you're a sufferer of mental health illnesses, which is very prevalent in today's society. Like, you wouldn't believe how many people deal with depression and anxiety. And what's funny about it is when you're a sufferer of it in yourself, you often feel like it's just you. You often feel like you're all alone in the battle. But you're really not, because almost half of the world's population has probably dealt with it, if not more, at some point or another. Especially in the way today's society works, where everyone is kind of on their own. You know what I mean? Like that tribalism, that group setting, that feeling of belonging, that feeling of safeness just isn't as prevalent as it once was, especially with the rise of social media. I always say that social media, even though it's supposed to be a big group setting, it often makes people feel more excluded than included, right? So if you're a fan of reading books about mental health, I really thought I was going to phrase that wrong, and are really into diving about how, you know, the human psyche works and how people interact with each other and the feelings that we all deal with, this book is definitely worth the read, because it goes into all of that, and maybe it'll help you realize a lot of different things like it helped me. So guys, check out Lost Connections. If you've read it, leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. I didn't think I was going to really thoroughly enjoy this book, and it really took me by surprise by the end of it. So I will catch you later, guys. Again, knowledge is always power. Keep reading. See ya. Bye.